Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
What a morning we've had so far. So now, Linda SAUGET, and if all of you read Boomer Times, you know that Linda writes a column every month. It's called Think Yes. And Linda SAUGET wrote the book. The way I found her was If You Think It. That's the name of her book. So good morning, Linda.
Hi, Anita. Good morning.
Thanks for getting up early for us. And before we get into a wonderful conversation about happiness, let's just go over the expo for 1 minute. I haven't done much about it because we've had such great people this morning, but it was fun, wasn't it?
I thought it was the best expo yet.
Right? We all did.
I really did. It was fun. I think all the exhibitors were fabulous, and they had a great time, and the guests had a great time. I think you did an amazing job.
Well, the team, it's always a team effort, and let me thank you, and let me say that we are looking forward to January the 22nd for our next one, and we already have people signing up. So
I'm sure. After that, I'm sure people were signing up.
And I have pictures, Linda, that our photographer got me. She got them to me very quickly today. And they're gorgeous. And there's so many things. And I don't have a picture of you. I couldn't imagine. There's only one with a side view of you, and I happen to know it's you. I don't know why she missed it. You know, my problem is when you have a photographer, you literally have to have someone walking around and telling them, even though you tell them, look, get a picture of everybody, blah, blah, blah. You need someone to be the director, and we didn't have that. So there are people like you that I would have wanted full face, but I just have this one little side of view of you. Anyway.
Well, I have to take responsibility probably because I'm camera shy because I'm so unphotogenic that whenever she comes over and wants to take a picture of me, I kind of wave her off.
So you're the culprit. She would have done it.
I'm the culprit.
Okay,
I
sorry.
Take a good picture.
I'm sorry. Okay. Anyway, okay, well.
But I have January 22nd on my calendar.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very exciting. We're raring to go. And, okay, so let that be. Well, you know, of course, everybody who was there knows about the end that we had, I guess it's La Bear, and there were these were men who, if you go to their club, they actually stripped down to their G-string, but we didn't allow that. We just let them take off their shirts, and even with that, they're so gorgeous, and they were so neat. They were so much fun. They were really amazing, weren't they, Linda?
They were. I mean, they were fun. They were engaging with the audience. It was, it was just pure fun. It really was.
Yeah, it is. And so we're going to have fun. And those beautiful Ziegfeld Follies ladies, they were gorgeous.
And I know they're going to be there on the next one as well.
Right. Okay, so I asked Linda. Now, Linda does something that's extraordinary. There are always speakers at these senior communities, whether the retirement communities, but there are some who are just extraordinary, and Linda is one of them. So, Linda, you love talking at these senior communities, don't you?
I do. I think it's my calling, to tell you the truth. Even though I have a day job,
right,
quote unquote.
She's a powerful executive, truth, but
but what I really love doing is encouraging and uplifting people. And because of my column, so I have to thank you, because my column in Boomer Times, I have been contacted by some independent living and assisted living facilities and senior communities and asked if I speak. And so I've started this, and now I'm doing it fairly regularly, and I love it. It's my calling for sure.
Okay, so give me a sampling of what first of all, you get turned on so that you can turn them on. Tell us about what you would like to share with us today.
Well, every talk that I give is like my column. It's a positive message. And so I will take a topic, like right now I'm working on one for my next set of presentations, and it's going to be on kindness. And I might talk about well-being or happiness or how our thoughts affect our life. And, so I'll pick a topic, and then I put together a presentation and go out and present it. But it is always with a positive and encouraging message. It's always based on science. So everything has been studied, and even though things might have common sense behind them, like, it's just common sense to be nice, right? But there are scientific studies about the benefits of being nice. So I always research and present the science behind the topic that I'm giving, because it gives it substance and credence. And these things, today these things are being studied. There's an interest in psychology and in positive psychology in quantifying the things that we kind of know instinctively. So those are the things that I talk about at these presentations I do.
And the audience is very receptive, even though younger people don't understand that. They think it's so funny to spend time talking to the older people who sit there, and they don't really understand that it may be an older body, but the mind is still very young.
Absolutely. They get what I'm talking about. They like what I'm talking about. I mean, it's so gratifying because I see people shaking their heads, and it really depends on the facility, but in certain facilities and communities, they participate. They ask questions, and they'll share. When I say something that resonates with them, they'll share something with the audience, or they'll ask a question. And so they most definitely understand what I'm saying, appreciate what I'm saying, and I think it just gives, first of all, it's stimulating to the mind to have someone come in and speak about something that is applicable to everyday life. They may have somebody come in and speak about art or poetry or something, and that's good and that's stimulating and educational. But the topics that I talk about can be applied every single day of your life, and so it's stimulating to hear it, to think about it, to see how you can apply this in your own life, and they absolutely get and understand what I'm talking about. So it's really gratifying.
You told me a story once that when you finished, a woman came up to you. Why did you share that, and how she felt about your speech?
Well, which one was that? Because I have people coming up to me, honestly, I have people coming up to me after each presentation and saying, thanking me and saying that it made a difference. And I got a standing ovation last time at one of my facilities for the people who could stand. About half of them were in wheelchairs, but for the people who could stand, they stood. So I'm not sure which story I told you.
Doesn't matter.
I have one woman who always cuts out my column and brings it to the presentation.
Oh, no.
She gets Boomer Times, and she always brings my column. So I'm starting to get a little fan club.
Oh, I'm sure that's true. Well, you see, and even when you write the column for Boomer Times, I always write back to you. I said, that was perfect. I needed that today. You are so inspiring, and I know when you come to these beautiful communities, which they have great food, they have beautiful locations, beautiful environment, but they need to have someone give them something that they can't just get otherwise.
Right. And that's what I feel my calling is. So.
And is this, have you always had this and it just was sleeping?
I'm not even sure if it was sleeping. I've always had this, and I've kind of just applied it with my family, in raising my son. I manage people, so I manage my staff with my philosophy. And so I think I've always had it and I've always used it, but in a different way than what I'm doing right now. But this is such a core philosophy to my life and who I am and how I am, that I think I've always had it and just applied it in a different way. And my philosophy, I guess, if my book or, the things I talk about is, that the way we think, our thoughts, our attitudes, that totally impacts our life. How negative we are or how positive we are, how we think, how we perceive, the way our brain processes information totally colors our life. And so I'm trying to encourage people to reframe things, to look at things, even bad things, from a positive point of view. What is there to learn? And so that is kind of overriding, no matter what the topic is. That's an underlying theme of it. We're in control. We cannot control what happens to us. We have no control over that, pretty much. But we can control the way we respond to what happens to us. And so that's what I'm talking about, how to respond.
And who knows what these people have really gone through. You could be talking to people who are, Holocaust victims.
Oh, I have many Holocaust victims in these facilities, because one of the examples I give is Viktor Frankl, who was a psychiatrist who was in Auschwitz and lived through the Holocaust. He lost his wife and his parents. I think he lost his whole family except for a cousin or something, and himself. And he wrote the book, Man's Search for Meaning. And I talk about that book because what he's talking about is how can we make sense of tragedies and atrocities in our life? What is the meaning in suffering? And so I talk about that book, and I have people who raise their hands and tell me, or they'll come up to me if they don't want to speak, in front of the whole group. They'll come up to me afterwards and tell me that they're a Holocaust survivor. And so, the people that I'm talking to, just like everybody else, everybody has a story. We all go through challenges and difficulties, and some are more horrific than others, but everybody deals with things in their life. And so I try and bring in information about how do you deal with it, and that book by Viktor Frankl is one that I bring in and talk about because it's so powerful. Because what he says, one of the most famous lines in that book is, everything can be taken from you, your dignity, your self-respect, all your possessions, your comforts. Everything can be taken from you except one thing, and that's your ability to choose your thoughts under any set of circumstances. That's pretty powerful from somebody who went through the Holocaust.
That's really, that's just fabulous. And and that's why when you go there and you talk to them, they get inspired, and maybe that day they got up and they had some pain in their arms or their legs, or their family didn't call them, but they need something extra, and sometimes they don't read the newspapers and they sit and watch television, but here pops in this wonderful lady, Linda Sauget, and I know you have these great smiles, and they feel your energy, Linda. They feel that you're there to inspire them, and actually, I know you get inspired by them.
I do. And that is just one of the most beautiful compensations about giving of yourself, is you cannot give of yourself without getting something in return. As you give, as you sow, so shall you reap. And so whatever I give, I get back more from them. So it's really a special thing.
Well, let's talk about one of the things you talked about recently. I think it was on happiness. It was something.
Yeah.
Why don't we give our listeners a little peek into how you handle this?
Well, I talked about happiness because there is the longest running study on happiness was conducted by Harvard University. It's called the Harvard Study on Happiness. And 75 years ago, they decided they wanted to study what makes us happy. What is it that makes us happy? And why is happiness fleeting? Like, we might be happy, something might make us happy, but then it kind of subsides and then, goes up and down, peaks and valleys. And just so that you know, the study is still going on. It started 75 years ago. They selected 724 men, half of them from a poor section in Boston, and half of them were Harvard sophomores. So you had a pretty broad cross-section, poor, working class, regular people, and privileged, intelligent, Harvard students. So of these 724, they have been followed until they died. There are 60 still living, and they're in their 90s.
This is an amazing. Now, tell me what this is again. This is a story.
The Harvard Study on Happiness. They studied every 2 years. They took a baseline on these men and asked them every question conceivable about their life, their jobs, their family, their, just everything about them they documented, and their health. They got physical exams. Then every 2 years until they died, they were revisited and re-interviewed. And as these men got married, their wives became a part of the study. So thank goodness women started getting studied for happiness. And then as they had children and grandchildren, they are a part of the study. So the study is still going on by Harvard University. Only 60 of the original men are still alive. But this is what they found. So I'll put it in a nutshell. Number one, the reason why happiness is fleeting is because human beings are amazing at adapting and adjusting. So as soon as you get what you want, it becomes your new normal. And it doesn't bring you the same satisfaction and charge. So if you want that job, or you want money, or you want to get married, or whatever your goals are, as soon as you reach them, then that becomes your new normal. And so you adapt and adjust to it. And so you need something else to make you feel that charge of happiness, another car, a different house. But the thing is, and I just should add that the same is true in the reverse. So when you have difficulty and tragedy and illness, we do adapt and adjust to it. Maybe we don't like it, but we have no choice. And so that becomes our new normal. We have to live with whatever on the bad side of this happens. We have to adjust and adapt to that. And that's how the species survives. That's how human beings survives, because we are very good at adapting and adjusting. Well, what the study has obviously concluded is that happiness is never related to getting things. I mean, that's a temporary enjoyment or a pleasure, but true happiness is never related to getting or having things, because we just adjust and then we need more. So what makes us happy? Well, about 50% of our happiness is based on heredity. So our DNA, we have a predisposition based on heredity to being happy or not so happy. So if your parents were happy, you have a predisposition, about 50% of your happiness. You're predisposed through your DNA to be happy, happy-go-lucky, easygoing. If your parents were depressed, about 50% of your happiness is determined by that genetic predisposition.
That's amazing.
Isn't it? Now, 10% of our happiness is based on our life experiences, meaning if we're rich, if we're poor, if we're pretty, if we're successful. Only 10% of our happiness is related to our life circumstances. So that explains why people who are successful and wealthy and talented and famous could end up committing suicide, like Anthony Bourdain and Robin Williams, because only 10% of your happiness comes from your life circumstances. And so that leaves 40%. And I'm going to tell you the number one thing that brings happiness. But the 40% of our happiness comes from intentional activities. So there are specific things we can do that bring us happiness. They're not related to getting things. And I'm going to tell you what those are, but I want to tell you first the number one thing that this study has shown, and every other study on happiness, and it crosses every culture in the world, the most important ingredient to happiness is good quality relationships. It can be your family, it can be your friends, it could be your community activities that you're involved in through hobbies or interests or politics or your religion. So social connections through your community, because they really become your friends or your family, good quality relationships. And it's never too late to improve relationships, repair relationships, or make new relationships. But social connection is very important. We are social human beings, and we need to have good quality relationships to nurture us, and that is what brings the most happiness. So that's the number one thing that, knowing that, I think it's great because we can go out and get involved in activities or with our neighbors or with our friends or family, repair things, and just make sure that we are surrounding ourselves. And so good relationships, meaning, because you can be lonely in a crowd and you could be lonely in a marriage. So good relationships, meaning, they're not degrading or filled with conflict, that they're good, enjoyable relationships. That's number one. After all these years of study and even shorter studies on happiness have confirmed that. And then the 40% of our happiness that is based on intentional activity, I could talk a lot. I'm just going to say what they are, but a lot. We could do a show on each of these. But the intentional activities are, number one, expressing gratitude and appreciation. People who have in their heart. So I'm not just saying to say that I'm grateful, but to feel in your heart gratitude and appreciation. People who express and feel gratitude and appreciation, that is one of the roads to happiness. Another one, like I said, we could talk a whole show on each of these, but practicing acts of kindness. When you are kind, besides the fact that in your blood serotonin is released, which is the feel-good chemical that antidepressants have, that's an enzyme in our brain. So that is released as the doer of an activity. The person who receives kindness has that serotonin increased, and even an observer of an act of kindness. So there are chemicals in our body and enzymes that actually make us feel better when we are kind, receive kindness, or observe kindness. So practicing acts of kindness is the second thing. Number 3, forgive and forget. It doesn't matter if the judge and jury all vote that you were wronged. You have every reason to be angry, and you have every right to feel the way you do, but you have to let it go. It doesn't matter if you're right and you've been wronged, and you have every reason in the world to feel resentment and anger and hatred. You have to let it go, forgive and forget. But the important thing about forgiveness is to remember that when you forgive someone, that does not mean that you condone it, agree with it, like it, or want it. It just means that you're going to allow it. You're going to just let it be. You don't like it. You don't condone it. You were wronged, but you're going to let it be, because what you resist persists, and what you allow to be ceases to have control over you. So for happiness, you have to forgive and forget, let it go. The other next thing is to be a benefit finder rather than a fault finder. So, this is the person who falls down and breaks his wrist and says, this is great. At least I didn't crack my head open. So be a benefit finder, not a fault finder.
Very good. Well, this is so wonderful. And I guess what's happened is, would you believe that we have run out of time?
Oh, my God.
So I can see why this takes an hour when you do this.
Yeah. Well, I hope that that the audience enjoyed.
Fabulous, Linda. So I'm so thrilled. And for people who would like to have Linda come to their community, you can call her. Let me just give you a way to get her. You can actually look in the magazine, and you can email her. I know you won't be able to write that down. So if you want, just call us at our office. We'll put you both together. And our number is 561-864-1101. Again, 561-864-1101. Thank you, Linda. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Anita. You too.
Bye.